Good morning, I'm Rajiv from Fixlow, and thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to get into it because we've got a short, sharp and inspiring session for you today. Unusually, for those of you who've previously been to our webinars, as this is short, sharp and inspiring, or the short part at least is different, we won't be taking live questions, but we still want to hear from you. So if there are any comments that you have, anything else you would like us to cover in the webinar series, or just if you'd like to say hi, please use the box on the right hand side of your screen, the comment box from GoToWebinar. We would love to hear from you. Today we are talking about something which is hugely interesting, and I caught up with Peter about it a few weeks ago. It's about leading an agency into a 4.0 world. All information on this webinar is for information purposes only and shouldn't be treated as legal advice or official guidance. Not that I think with the subject of this you would treat it as such. And without further ado, I'd love for our guest today to introduce himself. I suspect many of you already know him, but Peter, would you like to give us your history, who you are and what you do?
Well, that's very kind of you. First of all, thank you very much indeed for inviting me, Raj, today. It's lovely to see you, and really great to contribute to this brilliant series that you've been putting on, I know, for several months now, and congratulations for all the support you're giving to agents right up and down the country. I was an estate agent when I left school. I ran an office for a while, and then I became a house builder. I was sales director for Barratt Homes, or one of their regions. I returned to a estate agency, ran a very successful business called Jackson Property Services, where I was group managing director, and we sold that to the Halifax, and probably I should probably not say anything about that experience, but anyway, we sold it, and we had 30 branches when we sold the business, and so it's quite a good size agency. And it was very pioneering. We were the first agency to open 7 days a week, 9 to 7, 7 days a week, and then we went 9 till 9, 7 days a week in London. We had branded cars, all our team wore uniforms. We had a dedicated training centre, 8,000 square foot training centre. It was a sort of a forerunner of several models that have evolved since, and very proud of the team I worked with there. It was absolutely first class experience. And then I set up a marketing agency to work specifically with property companies. That was our sort of our speciality. And then along the way, created the Property Academy, which is a business which basically seeks to enable people to fulfill their potential. We want to inspire people to be the best that they can be. And then along the way, also invented a little thing called the Best Estate Agent Guide, which assesses every single branch and agency in the country. And of course, we announced the results at the EA Masters, which very conveniently is a week today on the 8th of October, where we've got the biggest event in the industry being held. And this year, of course, it's virtual, so every seat is front row, and we're very much looking forward to that. So that's a potted version of me, Raj. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you missed out your most recent accolade, which is being selected as the most influential person in the property sector by Simon Bradbury, who is himself one of the most influential people in the property sector. But we have a huge amount to cover up. We're not going to talk about who came in third place. And today we're looking at the 4.0 world. And here's a slide which I think sort of highlights it. But what is a 4.0 world?
Okay, so in broad terms, Raj, there's been, in my opinion, a bit like Simon Bradbury's, it is just an opinion, and so it's open to be challenged. But I believe that there have been, broadly speaking, 4 eras, and we've just entered the 4th era of customer expectation. So the first era was what I call the store. What that means is that in 1.0, basically, people bought goods and services locally. The key determinator was whether or not there was a shop or a store or a service provider in their location. And they'd go to the store and they would buy what they wanted if it was available. And if it wasn't available, they would substitute or they would do without. It was really quite simple. And there were many, many iterations. There was a 1.1, 1.2, 1.9, 1.12, 1.17, and so on. But broadly speaking, up until about 1950, that was the basis on which the customer their expectations were, if I can't buy it locally, I can't buy it. Around 1950, things changed, principally as a consequence of television advertising, and brands came to the fore. I mean, there were brands always beforehand, but brands really took off at this stage. And if you've watched the excellent series Mad Men, you'll know what I'm talking about in terms of the 50s and 60s advertising boom, that basically redefined customer expectations again around the whole brand experience. By the way, these things layer on top of each other. So location was still relevant, and then brand, was layered on top. On top of that, about the year 2000 is where the internet properly took off. Now, let's be blunt, the internet has been around a long time before that, but it properly took off about 2000. That's where it really started to become the principal sort of medium for a lot of people in terms of their whole customer journey. And the whole digital era, not just the internet, but the whole digital era absolutely exploded. But we've actually moved into what I believe is 4.0, and it's a redefining of a further step change in terms of the customer expectations. And to be blunt, and I'm going to be really blunt, I don't think that the vast majority of estate agents actually embrace 3.0. I think that a very, very significant number of estate agents have been absolutely brilliant at 2.0. They've developed their brand and honed their brand really, really well. But I think as an industry, I'm generalizing, there are of course many notable exceptions, but as an industry, they have not been quick to jump onto new technologies such as fixed flow, which for those who have has been an absolute game changer in so many ways. They've not properly embraced digital in terms of its marketing. And so in many ways, they've got to catch up to do on 3.0. But the customer wants 3 additional things that are a feature of the 4.0 world. The first is that they want things to be functional and uplifting. The second, they want it to be consistent and individual. And thirdly, they expect they expect their needs now to be anticipated. In other words, rather than them going to the supplier or to the manufacturer, their expectation now is that the manufacturer or supplier will go to them. In other words, we've moved into an anticipative and proactive era. And those 3 things combined layer on top of the necessity now to have a digital experience, on top of the necessity to have a brand that stands for the values that match those of the customer. And yes, location is still a factor, albeit much less of one than it was in terms of yesteryear. So that's broadly speaking what 4.0 is about, Raj. And what we've been doing, I actually developed this model before COVID. I developed this model at the start of the year, and I've been taking our members through it, trying to help them to understand what they need to do in terms of these new customer changes. Well, it depends on your viewpoint. It's either scary as heck or it's massively exciting, and I think you could probably tell which camp I fall into. And for a lot of firms, they really have embraced this. There's some incredible examples of businesses that have embraced this and really, really have taken their whole service proposition to another level. And that's the next part of this, really, in terms of this loop, is having established the customer expectation. And bear in mind, there are different levels. A first-time buyer has a different expectation, perhaps, to somebody who's selling for the 10th time, or somebody that's renting a studio apartment has got a very different expectation to a landlord that owns 50 properties in a portfolio. There's a real range of different expectations, but for each market, you've got to understand what is your product and service level and proposition, and it's got to have a competitive advantage. And what I mean by that is, there has to be a way to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, the only differentiation is price. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go on to 100 estate agent websites, I guarantee you that in 90 or more, you will see the following terms: independent, professional, long established, or a year when established, and other what I call nominalizations, such as those, which actually mean nothing, and I mean nothing to the customer. One of our great speakers, a brilliant woman called Janie Smith, who wrote a book called Creating Competitive Advantage, when she presented to our members a few weeks ago, and she looked at all of their websites, or I should say the industry's websites, she said to terms like independent and professional and qualified and members of this or that or the other, and long-standing and blah, blah. She just went blah, blah, blah. All of that is blah, blah, blah. It's just noise. It doesn't mean anything to me as a customer. You've got to come up with something that gives you a competitive advantage. And you've got to and it has to be something that's relevant that the customer wants. And there's plenty of examples that I can share with you of firms. I'll give you one straight away. Preston Baker, they've got a brilliant branded sales proposition which absolutely proves over 4,000 transactions that if you select, because they've got a menu, if you select that particular option, your property is sold typically for 6% more than if you take that other option, and it's sold in 16 days or quicker on average. So there's a very clear proposition in terms of why would you instruct them to sell with you. Now the third stage is this. This is the really important piece of this. It's all important, I hope, but this is the bit that I'm trying to really get people to understand. It used to be that in order to deliver your service and your proposition, you would think about the people that you need to deliver it. And then you would think about what tech or outsourcing can we do to support those people. I'm saying flip that around. I'm saying now, having developed your proposition, the first thing to do is to ask the question, what tech or outsourced options are there? And then, having established what is available and what is appropriate, then consider what I call the essential people. What are the essential people that you'll need to be able to deliver? So it starts with tech and outsourcing and then essential people. And then the final step of the loop is feedback for two reasons. One, to make sure that you are delivering the proposition and you are delivering on your promise, really important. And two, to make sure that the customer hasn't moved to 4.1 or 4.2 or 4.3, which they will do. And therefore, as they do, so your product and service needs to be refined and updated and improved further. So this is what I'm calling the CX 4.0 loop. It's a little model which I'm being told is being very helpful for people to get this sort of era into some sort of context as to what they need to do.
That is brilliant, and was what I describe as short, sharp, and inspiring. So you're definitely ticking the boxes on what we told people they were signing up to in today's webinar. One of the key drivers we're getting as a feedback from our clients, and we may come on to this later on, is that they're increasingly under pressure to provide a mass customized experience to landlords. So providing a customized experience to the landlords in a clear and consistent way, and they're using technology to leverage that. So let's say that the landlord's brother-in-law is an electrician. Well, only electrical jobs should go to them first, but make sure that it doesn't go to them on a Sunday. Whatever they want is that sort of high level of customization. And I think we'll come on to that now. So we covered off what is 4.0, and you've summarized that incredibly well, but I know that you're talking about that at length at EA Masters, which we'll come back to in a moment. I guess for those people who are listening today, that hopefully rings true with what they're seeing out in the market and the demands or requests they're getting through. But what should agencies do now to prepare for a 4.0 world?
Okay, so in my opinion, we are currently in what I'm calling the awkward bit in the middle. So we had the old normal, which isn't coming back. We have the next normal, which we're not in yet. I don't believe that walking around wearing masks, not being able to go and shake hands, not being able to go and have a beer with your mates, etc., etc. I refuse to call that normal. I regard this period as being the awkward bit in the middle. And therefore, what all businesses need to do is to navigate through this awkward bit in the middle, but at the same time realize that there will be a next normal. And just as COVID-19 hit incredibly fast, I mean, nobody called it. Maybe one person or two people. The vast majority of us did not call it, even though we had the warning signs. We still thought, oh, it can't happen to us. It's a Chinese problem. It's not our problem. The fact of the matter is that it could potentially finish quite quickly, as and when they get a vaccine and it gets distributed. So if that is the case, it may not be, but if it is the case, then actually we had an excuse for not preparing properly for COVID-19. But I don't think we have an excuse for not preparing properly for post-COVID-19 or when COVID-19 becomes more manageable, let's put it that way, if not completely eradicated. So my sense is that what we need to be doing is navigating this awkward bit and being mindful of the future. So it starts, as I say, with that whole 4.0 mindset. And I think the key thing is, and it's also, this mitigates potentially for agents for their future businesses, it's about this idea of partnerships with tech and outsourcing. And you may think, or your listeners or viewers may think, oh, he's bound to be saying that. He's a guest of Fixflow. That's why he's doing it. It's got absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever. I'm a big fan of Fixflow. Have been from the day you started the business, Raj. And I know lots and lots of agents properly benefit. I genuinely cannot conceive of a lettings agency not using Fixflow or another product that does something similar to Fixflow. You know, there are others, I'm sure, although I don't know who they are, but I'm sure there are others. But what you've done is you've absolutely been at the vanguard for me of this transformation away from the labor-intensive, people-intensive process and switching to automating. And in simple terms, what I believe needs to happen is we need to outsource and we need to automate the grunt work, right? The repetitive grunt work that's just there, because actually automation will deliver it better. At the same time, though, we must retain the essential peoples. It's still a people business. Relationships with landlords, relationship with tenants is really, really important. But we need to upskill the people. I think we actually need less people in most agencies, but they need to be of a higher caliber, better trained, better remunerated, better served, in turn for them to provide a better service to their landlords and their tenants. And this for me is fundamental to the preparation. So the key preparation is to start by saying, what parts of my business can I automate? And the second part is, what parts of it can I outsource? And if there is a further downturn, whether that's a pandemic or whether it's another black swan event, and let's be blunt here, we are going to have other black swan events. They seem to be occurring more frequently. If you go back to sort of, if you like, 9/11 onwards, there's been a dozen or more quite major black swan type of moments, which seems to me, maybe my memory is fading, but it seems to me that we are experiencing more of them more frequently, perhaps because of the connectivity of the world. Anyway, the point I'm making is you need to protect yourself against a future unknown. And by automating and not having a bloated payroll, and by outsourcing, it enables agents to basically switch things on and off a lot more easily than it is in terms of bringing people on or laying them off, which, let's face it, is a horrible thing to have to do anyway. So what can people do to prepare? In simple terms, they can properly research and make sure that they have got all the tech options identified. And at the risk of plugging, at the EA Masters, we're going to have, there's 40 companies there exhibiting their wares, and every single, well, there's over 30 brand new product launches and innovations that are being unveiled. And I'm so excited. There's one in particular which I can't reveal, I'm under NDA, but it is quite extraordinary, and it's going to blow the industry away. And the great thing is that this particular product will integrate with Fixflow, so therefore, you know, you've got this that option there as well. But seriously, now is the time for agents to start looking at all the tech options available and the outsourced options available, and to also think about how they can upgrade their teams. And let's face it, a lot of people can work remotely now. Now, I do not believe that it's black and white. You should work from home or you should work from the office. If you'll pardon the expression, there's at least 50 shades of grey, possibly more. And you know, the idea is that some people are much better suited, and some roles are much better suited for office-based work, and other roles can be managed very, very well from any location, quite frankly, and that includes internationally as well. So there's no reason why potentially you could not have people all over the world doing certain functions of the estate agency work, particularly in the lettings side of things. So my sense is that's the preparation I'd be doing, is researching the tech and researching the other service providers that you can outsource to, and then preparing your people and upskilling and upgrading so that you end up with probably fewer people, but of a higher caliber on that overall.
Thank you. And I think what you touched on there, which is what I describe as fewer, better qualified people managing the human relationships, and technology managing the processing, is something that we've seen happen across different sectors. And if that were to happen in agency, I think it might solve one of the big challenges, which is how do we make agency not something that people fall into, but a deliberate career choice? And I'm thinking particularly about the property management sector, a deliberate and viable professional services career path. And you do that by sort of taking away the repetitive tasks, upskilling and empowering people. And through doing so, and I know some of the agencies that we work with, and you do too, really see that as a growth engine for their business. I'd be interested, just before we move on to the next session, what's your view then as we make this transition? So we're in the awkward bit in the middle. But what's your view of agencies that don't take this opportunity? What will the consequences be for them as the world moves on? Will it be a dinosaur-like moment?
I think there's been very few dinosaur moments. In other words, where things changed literally overnight, due to an event. But it's a gradual erosion. And I think what happens is that you get people who resist and resist and resist, and indeed they cite their continued success in a certain area, but eventually, they do find themselves being left behind. And so my sense is this is a gradual thing, and I think that the transition, that you've got to navigate this awkward bit. You absolutely have to navigate it, and that might require different tactics in this current time to that of the next normal when we enter into it. But look, you asked about what I'm saying. We've carried out the biggest assessment of estate agency businesses, sales and lettings, for 20 years now. And in the last 4 years, the Best Estate Agent Guide assesses just about every single branch. It actually assesses every single listing on Rightmove at any point in time. There are 1.5 million properties listed on average on Rightmove at any point in time. And we analyse every single one of them. And we analyse their performance in terms of, did they let, yes or no, and how many leads did they generate, and how many views did they have, and all a whole wealth of different criteria based around what the customer tells us in our surveys. We've surveyed 100,000 people over 13 years who are actively moving, 34,000 of them this year, the biggest ever survey. And we asked them, what's important to you about your estate agent? What's important to you about letting your property? What's important to you about renting a property? And what they tell us is that fundamentally, when it comes to letting a property, they want their property to be marketed extraordinarily well to give it the best possible chance to achieve the best possible price and to be let within their timetable. That's basically it. So what we know and what we can see against that criteria, and also with the mystery shops that we carry out, because they also want a service that is commensurate with the fees that they're paying, which they think is a lot of money, and they expect, hence this 4.0 idea of consistent and individual. So the trouble with automation is that it could appear that it's going to be just, it's not going to be personalized. Well, that's of course rubbish, because Amazon have demonstrated for years how that could be, how they've overcome that. Anyway, the point I'm making is this: the gap between the best and the rest is widening. It's widened every single year, and it's widening again and again and again. And the best agents are quite extraordinary in terms of what they're delivering compared to the average. Never mind the poor ones. The poor ones, quite frankly, will go by the wayside. I mean, how they stay in business is beyond me. Many of them are hardly drawing minimum wage, quite frankly, in terms of what their net positions are. But they somehow manage to bumble along. It's the average ones that need to really be concerned, because the gap is widening between them and the very best agents. And we're seeing that based on all the data, all the analysis, all the mystery shops, and all the innovations that the best agents are incorporating into their business. And it's no coincidence, Raj, that we share a lot of the same members and clients. A lot of the Property Academy members, if not all, use fixed flow. Not all fixed flow members are members of Property Academy yet, but we'll work on that. But nonetheless, we share a lot of clients who have that same ambition and same desire to be the best that they can possibly be. And that's driving them. And what I'm seeing from this period right now is that the best agents, whilst of course they took body blows, and of course many of them were really concerned at the start of lockdown and everything else, but they've come out of it in better shape. One of our speakers, Grant Leboff, said on a webinar that we ran, he said, COVID-19 has changed nothing. It has accelerated everything. And we can debate the first part of that, but I think the second part is not for debate. It has accelerated everything. And that's why I'm excited seeing some of the new initiatives. But I think we're going to be talking about the future next, aren't we?
We are, and I think that one of the oft-quoted sayings is change happens slowly and then quickly. Actually, in a COVID environment, it happens quickly and then even more quickly. And so we're going to move on now to the future of agency. So we've talked about the new world coming and what people can do so tangibly to prepare. I'm interested in, what do you think agency will look like in a 4.x world?
Okay. time to get controversial. And look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm not scared. I hate making forecasts about markets because I don't think anyone's got the first clue about it in terms of what's going to happen. But I do make forecasts about people's behaviours and what I observe in terms of what customers want and so on. So many years ago, I say many years ago, it was at least 10, possibly 12 years ago at our event, Lettings Live, I stood up and I said that this industry is going to go from sales and lettings to lettings and sales. And I was wrong. It has gone from sales and lettings to property management and sales. Property management is without question, in my opinion, the most important part of a estate agency. And here's the thing. It should not just be solely around properties that are rented out. I think the opportunity for property management is for every single property, every homeowner, right, has got issues. Right now, just today, I've run out of gas. I live in the middle of nowhere, and I've just run out because I didn't check it. So I didn't get my scrambled eggs this morning because I've got to go get some more gas. We're not on the mains. I've got problems with some guttering at the moment. I've got a bit of a leak going down one wall. I want to fix an electrical socket that's burnt out. I've got a long list to do. Right. The point is, I bet you every single one of your viewers today has a similar list in terms of the things that need doing at their properties. Now, if this was a rented property, if I was a renter, I'd be phoning up the agent or be phoning up the landlord and say, "Oi, get around here and get this sorted out." Blah blah blah. But as a homeowner, where do I go to? Where do I start? Right? And the answer is, it's ridiculous. I should be going to my estate agent, because my estate agent, right, should have the expertise to know all the contractors. They should have the knowledge of how to manage the process. And there are some firms that have embraced this idea. Some of our members are now actively embracing this idea. And the whole idea is to have property management as the number one part of the business. And let's face it, it absolutely is the value add. Your business, estate agency businesses are valued based on their property management businesses. It's the key criteria. So why does it just have to be properties that are rented? Why can't it be properties that are owned as well? So my sense is that what that will also do is keep the relationship for the agent relevant, as opposed to the once every 10 years that pop, or whatever it is, the frequency of sales popping up. "Oh, hello, remember me?" No, actually, I don't remember you. As opposed to actually every month having an ongoing relationship about some aspect of their property to be relevant in their lives. So that really excites me, because all of a sudden I'm seeing the opportunity to create subscription incomes. I'm seeing the opportunity for agents to actually have much more security, have much more relevance, and to basically be fundamentally useful and important, as opposed to occasionally being transactional. So that's the big change, Raj. And look, people will disagree with me, and there will be those who are not interested. And I still meet agents who don't get lettings at all, and property management, they just want to sell. And yeah, maybe there's a space for that. It's niche, but maybe there's a space for it. But I believe that this industry has actually moved to property management and sales, and property management is king.
Peter, we are seeing clients start to use our platform for properties they have sold, so that their purchasers, as they view them, who one day will be their vendors or landlords in the future, they're starting to offer them services, so repairs services, checks, compliance checks, and that sort of stuff through our platform. And I think that home services advisory role of the agent, of being the property trusted advisor, is something that we're seeing predominantly starting in London, actually. But I suspect it is something that will take off. And I'm conscious that we promised a short, sharp and inspiring, and I think you've ticked all the boxes. Just before we go, is there one more thing that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I just want to go back to this idea about the gap widening, really, but the thing is, it's not too late to get onto the right side of that gap. You know, it's not that the agents have created such a gap that you can't play catch up. You can, but this is not the time to delay, in my opinion. It's about reorganising the business from top to bottom. And if you'll indulge me, you know, on Thursday, a week today, we've got 40 sessions, 40 speakers, 28 hours of content, including probably the world's leading marketer, Seth Godin. talking about all of the CX 4.0 and also all about the next normal in terms of what to expect. So, I very much hope, and I'm sure a number of your viewers here today and members will be with us, but if they still wish to, there's still time to buy a ticket for just 62 quid per person with our best package deal, he says, plugging like mad. But no, in all seriousness, I'm really excited about what we're going to be sharing and hopefully guiding or enabling agents to really get a good sense of what they need to do in this next normal, which we will come into at some point.
Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to EA Masters in a week. Moving on to the next webinar in our series, it's how to maximize the output of your letting agency with Ian White, where we're going to go through the people, the processes and the like. If you're interested in that, you'll receive details by email after this, and you're very welcome to register. Just wanted to thank you all very much for attending, and thank you very much, Peter, for sharing your time, your insights and your inspiration with us. We would love to hear from you. So as you leave the room, please do fill in the feedback survey. This is a new style of webinar that we've done. We'd love to hear whether it works for you. If you've got feedback, whether positive or negative, it's the only way that we can improve. So please do share it. We do love to hear from you. And I wish you all a wonderful and hopefully uplifting Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Cheers.